have you seen the margin in the Pennsylvania special election right now? Hello, everybody. I'm Eric, and this is the latest episode of the Shield Society podcast. And I'm joined today by Joe Enders and Joshua Heckathorn. How you guys doing tonight, guys?
Doing good.
Could be going better. We'll see with after this election.
Exactly, yes. This election is very intense. So, oh my god, we got a very full plate to eat up tonight, so let's go ahead and get started. Of course, what the title references to when I say Man of Steel, we are referring, of course, to good old President Trump bringing back protectionism like never before. Because man, oh man, it is something I think we have desperately been needing for a long time. Tariffs on solar panels, tariffs on steel, and he has finally enacted those campaign promises against all the screams of the libertarians and the economists and those who worship the free market above all else, with absolutely no regulations or restrictions whatsoever. But of course, it's much to the praise of the working class, and even to traditional Democratic blocs, including the unions and Democrats, the workers in the Rust Belt, and it could have serious implications for 2020. And of course, depending on how this election in Pennsylvania goes, it could affect that race as well. So, Joe, what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, I think the most important thing to be looking at when regarding why he put these tariffs out, when he put them out, it's definitely related to this Pennsylvania election. He's trying to mobilize his base, and in the current election right now for District 18, sorry, this is an area where Donald Trump won by 20 points. So looking forward, we're definitely going to be seeing him look to more protectionist moves especially when we're going to be going into elections in these Rust Belt states that allowed him to get ahead and win them.
Exactly, yes. The current updates right now, we're following the failing New York Times update. At least I am. I'm not sure what source you guys are following. The Democrat, Connor Lamb, we were hoping to have Lamb for dinner tonight, but right now he may be having us for dinner. He's leading by 0.3%, 700 votes, 98% of precincts reporting in, 49.9 ahead of 49.5. That's probably a typo on that should say 49.6. And remember, margin of 700 votes. And guess what, guys? The Libertarian has 1,300 votes. So when can we go after this guy with pitchforks and torches, huh?
Look, I'm not necessarily endorser of the Inquisition, but an Inquisition execution is definitely, it's like, I don't know, maybe just a forethought.
It just wasn't enough that libertarians had to go and ruin Virginia, too. You know, that same libertarian, Robert Jarvis, I think was his name, is the guy who prevented Ken Cuccinelli from becoming governor of Virginia in 2013, and Ed Gillespie from unseating Mark Warner in the Senate seat in 2014. Of course, come 2017, the state has gone decisively blue due to the influx of hundreds of thousands of federal workers in the northern burbs due to D.C., but back when it was still a swing state, it could have gone red. It could have gone red in 2016 for all we know, but nope, the Libertarians had to come in and say, hold on up, guys, no step on snack. And now they're ruining Pennsylvania. Oh, Josh, you were going to say something?
My favorite county back in the presidential election was Gary Johnson had 666 votes in one county. And I remember screenshotting it and putting it
on. That's a sign right there, man. That's a sign right there. Oh, my God.
It's a sign.
I'm surprised it wasn't 69 votes.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Now they ruined Virginia. Gary Johnson ruined libertarianism, and when Yal's not going and ruining Michigan, you have another libertarian here trying to ruin a Pennsylvania seat, which, as if Pennsylvania congressional districts needed one more problem on top of their ultra-corrupt court redrawing the districts. I'm pretty sure they cannot legally, constitutionally do that, but I digress. Going back to what President Trump was doing with the steel tariffs, it's obvious, like you said, Joe, he's aiming them at these Rust Belt states. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, even others like Iowa, Ohio, probably even Minnesota for all we know. And I was thinking, yeah, he's definitely going after these tariffs to fire up that particular district. Again, it went for him by 20 points. The district rating is R plus 11 in registration, so that means Trump got at least like 9% of Democrats to flip. And now, what we're looking at, again, from the latest counts, let me refresh, the Democrat is narrowly ahead. But keep in mind, if Connor Lamb wins this, it will be because, kind of like Doug Jones in Alabama, he's marketing himself as a conservative Democrat, which I find to be really interesting. I know that's kind of an oxymoron, but among other things he said...
They don't exist anymore. Not anymore.
Not too much anymore.
Just like lesbians.
Okay, Milo. Okay, Milo. But he was running.
Look. I'm not a fan of everything he says, but I'm not gonna lie. That was funny.
Oh yeah, no, it was funny. It was definitely funny. It was one of the funniest things he's ever said. But but well, sorry, what were you gonna say?
When it comes to the Rust Belt, I think obviously the tariffs are having a huge pro-Trump effect because steel factories are reopening.
Oh
It's
yeah,
true, it's happening.
Mhm.
But people are looking. The people who are criticizing these tariffs are the ones who are criticizing its effect outside of the steel industry. No one's denying that steel factories are opening back up and that people are getting jobs. It's
Yeah.
just that obviously that has an effect on the rest of the economy. But the tariffs have a specific purpose, and it's trying to revamp the steel industry, or at least protect it. That's why it's called protectionism.
Mhm.
We're attempting to protect the domestic economy from foreign intervention, which in this case would be underpriced steel from other countries where they can subsidizing it using their manipulated currencies and near slave labor,
Exactly.
where we can't compete with that, at least not without either driving them out or putting on tariffs that make it so their profit margins are lower than ours.
Exactly, and yeah, you said it very well, Josh. That China and a lot of these other third world countries, they use literal slave labor. They have slave labor, child labor, sweatshops. So Pepe and I were talking about this the other day. You can't win the argument of utility if you're going for a strictly utilitarian view, and I mean Bentham utilitarianism, not utilitarianism.
Well, then bring back child labor,
Exactly. Yeah. No. But that's the argument. Is that of course China produces goods cheaper than us. They pay their people like what 10 cents an hour, if even that. They have children, they have slaves, sweatshops working 26-hour days. So, of course, Chinese-made stuff is going to be cheaper. That is a fact, yes. Because we are, I don't know, humane. We actually have workplace safety laws, workers' rights laws, safety, workplace regulations. Oh, so terrible, right? The triangle.
Child labor laws are destroying this country. In the words of Ron Swanson.
I might detract from you a little bit. I think there should be exceptions for child labor. I don't necessarily think that. I'm not talking 5-year-olds, obviously, which is what you got in China. I'm not saying China child labor, but I'm saying the fact that you can't work when you're from 10 to 15 years old, and yet your family is struggling to stay alive. Which usually not the case. But the point is this would be an incentive to get people off of government assistance. You would learn things about the workforce at a younger age. It would better prepare you for life, increase your chances of success, allow you to save, do things like that at a younger age. Now, I'm okay with allowing for that. I don't think that people should be required to go to school. I mean, honestly, I think public education indoctrinates the kids anyways.
Yep.
So, they should go to school. It might interfere, but.
Vocational schools, dude. Vocational and trade schools. That was the one thing.
Fine with that. I'm all for it.
That was the one thing in Trump's entire State of the Union, other than standing ovations for veterans and stuff like that. That was the one policy bit in his State of the Union that got everyone to their feet in applause. Even the Democrats, even the Black Caucus, they all leapt to their feet for trade schools and vocational schools. So I'm that's something we should definitely emphasize, because you look at it too. The steel workers, the blue collar working class folk. That is the backbone of America, especially in the Rust Belt. And again, Pepe,
people with actual skills. Wow.
Exactly, yeah. Because these aren't just skills; they're not just jobs; they're trades. Anybody can go work in retail at a J.C. Penney, but not everybody can go be a steel worker. And that was something too. They say, "Oh, the tariffs will cause a reduction in retail jobs." Yeah, that's true. But we'll still have a net gain in the increase of manufacturing jobs. And by reviving those skills, those arts, those crafts. Because
which actually creates capital.
Exactly. On top of the fact that because these are skills that people take years, maybe even a decade or so to learn, and then to be told by the Obamaites of the world, oh no, your job's not coming back. Go to school again or go work behind a counter. And that really kills their livelihood. And as Pepe pointed out, that leads to increased depression and suicide rates, especially among former working class men in the Rust Belt region. So it's about protecting the American psyche, as it were.
Not just the American psyche, but we're going to talk about the American male psyche. If you look at recent studies, there's a recent study that they did where they found that men's grip strength is actually half of what it was compared to Gen Xers.
Wow.
which is interesting. Very, very interesting, and they do link it to actually link it to occupational change. So you're seeing as the further we shift into that service style economy, and the less we rely on manufacturing economy, you're seeing in effect weaker men. You can also see that in Western nations, you're also seeing a decline in sperm counts among Western men.
I was about to mention that.
Men. It's been almost cut in half.
Oh
so this is what happens when you lose manufacturing. You get into a situation where men aren't, turning wrenches anymore. They're not swinging hammers anymore. They're not mining. They're not working in factories. They're not fixing things. They're not building things. They're not creating things. That really puts you as a country at a male disadvantage.
Yeah.
And I mean that compared to other countries, because this problem isn't persisting in places outside of the West with these, developed service style economies. In the manufacturing countries, it's actually increasing.
Yeah, and above all else, too, there's the electoral implications that I love to talk about. I mean, this is the reason Trump won. Remember, he lost over half of the swing states. He lost Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia, I guess, was considered a swing state, not anymore, and New Hampshire.
Yeah.
But he still won the biggest electoral victory for Republicans since Bush in '88, over 300 electoral votes, because he won Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. And he did that by winning former Democrats or people who have not voted in decades. The unions, the steelworkers. Again, you had unions praising Trump for these tariffs. Unions were like the backbone of the Democratic Party back in the day. And you have that flip, and you're going to continue seeing that flip with these tariffs and more. I think if he pulls out a NAFTA, that just seals the deal right there. And I think he will do that. Because that was something else, too, he said that was really smart. He used these tariffs once again as leverage. This is a major tactic he does in negotiating. He'll take, say, the 1.8 million amnesty in the DACA bill, or say Feinstein's gun bill and the Toomey Manchin bill in the gun control negotiations, and he'll say, okay, yeah, sure. These are the sacred cows you Democrats want. We also got to get the wall, and ending chain migration, and ending the visa lottery, and catch and release, all that stuff. Or we also, in the case of the immigration, and in the case of guns, we got to arm teachers and increase mental health awareness. And those are his firm baseline conditions, packaged together with the Dems' firm baseline conditions. And twice already, he's basically proven, yeah, the Dems will not play ball. Even if I offer them 3 times what they want, they will not accept my terms, and they'll shoot the whole thing down. And I predict it would probably be the same thing here, but he's taking this one international, because he said, hey, I'm imposing these tariffs. I'm willing to rescind them if we get a better NAFTA deal, which he's doing that to see if Canada and Mexico will play ball. Spoiler alert, in my humble opinion, they're not going to play ball, and he's probably going to pull out a NAFTA anyway. But it shows he's definitely still got his eyes on the big picture. And that definitely plays a role, again, in showing how he wants to take this from country to country. He's made Australia exempt because he wants to maybe work out a better trade deal with them. Canada and Mexico, we'll see how NAFTA goes. But this is all being tailored to the Rust Belt. And you look at how, not just that he won those 3 states, but Ohio and Iowa. He won Ohio by the biggest landslide of any candidate since Bush in '88, Democrat or Republican. He won Iowa by the biggest landslide of any candidate since Reagan in 1980. He came closer than anyone else since Reagan in 1984 to flipping Minnesota, which has not gone red since 1972. It's the longest reigning blue state in the country. And you look
I think he'll go red next time.
I think it will, yeah. He picks up Minnesota.
That's my prediction.
I think so, too. Maybe Nevada and New Hampshire, because they're swing states and they were excruciatingly close, but we'll have to wait and see. But I predict he flips...
Maybe Utah.
He'll definitely flip New Hampshire.
What was that, Joe?
He'll definitely flip New Hampshire.
Oh, I think so, yeah. That was literally stolen by voter fraud. But again, Minnesota would be a huge prize. And if you take Ohio and Iowa by those margins, like double digits or high single-digit margins, you take former swing states, big swing states, Ohio and Iowa, and make them safe red. You take Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and make them reliably red. You take Minnesota and make it lean red. Wisconsin's already been going that way for a while with, Ron Johnson, Scott Walker, all that. That right there would give the GOP at base over 300 electoral votes without any of the swing states. They could potentially go up to 326 electoral votes, and that would make them immediately relevant for decades more. This was kind of like an article that Pat Buchanan wrote the other day, talking about how the so-called old right, the Republican Party from basically Lincoln all the way to Coolidge, was very firmly the party of tariffs. And they were the dominant... Yes. Yeah, they were especially with Lincoln, McKinley, and Teddy Roosevelt. And over the course of those roughly 70 years, give or take, they won 14 out of 18 presidential elections. 12 out of 15 presidents were Republicans. most of the Republican victories were landslides, while the 4 Democratic victories, Cleveland twice and Wilson twice, were all by really close margins. So we could potentially see a whole new rebirth of the GOP if he does this.
Well, no, the Democrats weren't exactly very popular in the late 1800s after, losing a civil war.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. What was that, Jeff?
That's also a good point. But what we're going to be looking at is you got to understand the psyche of the people that are going out and voting. Now, if you look at the Rust Belt states, a majority of these people are, these are union workers. These are white working class. They basically have every single Republican value except the fact that Republicans want to impose right to work on them and destroy their unions and livelihoods. So that's not gonna cut it for them, and they wind up voting. They wind up becoming one issue voters because of that. Another thing that Republicans are pushing for that's pushing out these union workers is pension reform. That's gonna push people out as well, because the way that they want to do pension reform is basically to take away their pensions. They earned those pensions. They definitely don't want to see those get thrown in the trash. And I know there's abuses. I know the arguments that Republicans use against them. But it's really going to hurt them in elections, because these white working class people are Republicans in every respect. They're family people. They have children. They're married. There's absolutely no reason for these people to be going out and voting Democrat. They hold all the values of the Republicans, except the fact that Republicans are hell bent on destroying their livelihood.
Right. Yeah, because free trade somehow became just the dominant ideology. Again, free market, yeah, whatever. The comparison I always make, yes, the free market is good, but you have to have some control. You have to have some kind of regulations. For example, workplace safety, child labor laws, that's considered government regulation, is it not?
The issue is the association with the free market with free trade.
Right.
International free trade, I mean.
Exactly.
You can have a national free market without international free trade, because even when a free market trades with an unfree market, it makes the free market unfree because it's being intervened in by the unfree market, which is using subsidies and unfair tactics. Obviously, China.
Exactly.
And the American market. Basically, the Chinese are intervening in our market. It's basically what's going on.
And that was something that Elon Musk pointed out when he actually voiced support for Trump's tariffs. He said, this is good on Trump because this is fair game. You have the Chinese already leveling a 25% tariff on us on the cars we make, and the EU leveling a 19% tariff on cars we make. Like, we're the only major first world economy that actually buys into this free trade nonsense, because, again, if it were one thing if they weren't tariffing us, and it would be one thing if they actually had humane workers' rights laws the way we do, but they don't. And I would attribute that as just the fall of tariffs and protectionism as just one more thing that was the Great Depression was blamed on. They said, oh, well, obviously protectionism led to the Great Depression. I'm like, no, there were a variety of other things that led to it, but of course it was easy to just blanket blame all those things, especially when it was the Democrats coming in and doing everything they could to refute what the Republicans were doing. Even if the tariffs didn't really play a role in the Great Depression, I don't think they did, but it just shows there needs to be a renaissance in protectionism, and there's nothing wrong with it, especially because you have the American industries coming back, American jobs, American manufacturing, and especially in particular in relation to steel. It was pointed out that steel is a national security issue because steel is what we use in our ships, our aircraft carriers, tanks, weapons, and we don't want crap quality steel coming from China. What if we get in a war with them and then we have no steel? Then we're really up you-know-what creek.
Well, we give China 100% of our scrap metal, right?
Do we really?
Yeah.
They probably send it right back to us.
Oh my God! Probably recycle.
They'll probably send it right back to us with missils too if we ever go to war with them.
At least they like to recycle, so we can't fault them for that.
Look,
I admit, China's a fantastic copy machine.
Yeah. Well, what it's basically like is those saying we have free trade. It's like saying we have open borders, but then the country has only one way.
Yes.
It's not open borders if you can only go into the country.
Yeah, exactly.
Out of it. That's exactly what's going on. People come here and trade, but if we try to go and trade in their country, we simply can't because the tariffs are too high. Tariffs work, otherwise people wouldn't have them. They have a specific purpose, and obviously certain foreign goods are needed. Others are not. Some increase capital in your nation, others don't. If you import a good that you can manufacture into something that's worth more, obviously you make a profit. That's how capitalism works. But let's say if you're importing in short-term consumer goods, like from China, it's basically like buying plastic cups. You drink it one time, then you throw it away. Instead of buying an American-made cup that you could use for 20, 30 years, obviously that cup at first is going to be more expensive, than a plastic cup.
Right.
But over time, over 20, 30 years, those plastic cups are going to add up, and in the net gain over time, it's going to negatively impact long-term economic growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can definitely see that too, and I think that can be linked to how the Keynesian consumerism has kind of taken over our country, the spending over savings attitude. It makes us very short-sighted in our purchases. It makes us care about price more and less about quality. And that's something that not a lot of people like to talk about. But when you see something and you be like, oh, it's cheap, I better buy it. That's more the attitude that Americans have right now. And changing that attitude by, yes, you're going to make things more expensive with the tariff. That's going to happen. They're right about that. But the point is it's all about shifting the attitude back to quality and then you're going to have people buying things, saving things, making things fixable again. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that's always gotten me is like, why would anybody want to buy a new car when you can buy an old car that you can literally buy a new engine for $500 and put it in yourself? So that's a big difference. And not only that, it'll last long. It'll last very long. So you look at the quality of the products that you had coming out of America when things were made here is because it was made by quality workers that collectively bargain for their wages and get good benefits. That means they put care into their work. It means they put care into their product. Not only that, we look at the steel in this country. We have some of the best iron ore in the world. And when we go and smelt it, we're not making pig steel like the Chinese are. I was actually getting in an argument one day with this guy, and he was telling me that there is no difference in quality between Chinese steel and American steel. And I'm like, okay, I want you to go up to a cutlery collector and ask him which knives are of the highest quality. He's going to tell you. He's going to say Israeli, Japanese, and American, because those countries have the best ore in the world. Oh, and German too. They have the best ore in the world.
Exactly.
And you just can't get that in China. The only way that you can get it in China is if they get our scrap metal and go put it in their factories and reuse it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then sell it back to us for a higher price.
And sell it. Well, they're not going to. They're going to sell it back to us for a higher price, sure, but it's going to be a lower price because they're not going to have to mine it and they're not going to have to smelt it. Like, why aren't we reusing our own scrap metal? I don't even care if I don't even care if the government confiscated it and stockpiled it for use in the future. That'd be fine with me. It's better than giving it to our geopolitical foe. That's ridiculous.
Exactly, yeah. I think you mentioned, too, the fact that, like, they'll look at spendings over savings. And the mentality, of course, always has been, this shirt is 12 cents cheaper. Yeah, I like that. But recently there's been a bit of a shift, obviously, with the dawn of Trump, and especially in the Rust Belt, that there actually are a lot of Americans who are starting to see the value of tariffs and protectionism, and even to the point that they are willing to pay a little bit more. I think there were some polls from both Axios and Morning Consult. The Morning Consult poll showed, I think, 59% supported the steel tariff on China. And another study was actually done, I think, Pepe shared this with me, that one of the proposed tariffs would possibly raise the price of cars, foreign-made cars sold in the U.S., by no more than $45, at maximum $45. And I'm like, okay, $45. I'm sure a lot of Americans probably wouldn't mind paying that. That's nothing, especially when you have, over 4 million Americans now who have gotten like $1,000+ bonuses from the tax cut bill. And I think that's one more thing. The tax cut bill may have been foreshadowing the possible rises in prices as a result of the tariffs, which is very smart on Trump's part if that's the case. But it's definitely shifting. The public attitude is shifting, especially in the Rust Belt, because they know what it means for their businesses. Americans as a whole know that this means better American industry, and that we really have a chance, not just to get our economy back, but to become dominant. As Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke would like to say, we're already seeing a massive explosion in energy production in the U.S. We're set to surpass Russia as the #1 exporter of oil and other natural gases.
Or at least independent.
Independent, right. We'll definitely be independent.
For independence.
No question. We're definitely going to be independent. The question is if this is what Secretary Zinke wants us to do, is eventually become dominant, which means not only are we independent with energy, but we have so much left over, we can immediately start selling to other countries. Like, we can put Saudi Arabia and Russia completely out of business, as it were. And ideally, we could start doing that with steel as well and other things that we produce as well. Like, we already have like the tech industry in Silicon Valley. Why can't we also spread that kind of American dominance to other industries like the steel industry?
Though when it comes to tech, we're actually very much struggling when it comes to tech imports. Did you know in the past 10 years, I have a graph here, let me pull it up on my phone. I was just reading this earlier. When it comes to China's gains in tech imports worldwide, back in 1999, China was only about 5% of the world's exports and high-tech exports. Now they're over 25%. So that's 5 to 25 in the past 10 years. Well, we went from 20% down to 7% since the year 1999. So that's in nearly 20 years, there's been that massive change where even in tech exports, or in all exports in general, we're having issues because it comes down to our currency. The lower your currency is, the more dominant it is in exports worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
They've pinned their currency to ours to be, of course, always below ours. So they can beat us in trade. It doesn't necessarily mean their currency is better. Obviously, it's worse than ours, but it's more dominant. And that's why they're replacing us even as a reserve currency in many countries across the earth. They're slowly preparing to try to, in a way, replace us as an economy, because economies have different stages. We know you go from traditional to manufacturing to consumer-based. Basically, China is trying to create a self-sustaining manufacturing society and try to jump into the next economic stage while trying to drive America back into whatever earlier stages, or even just let us fall, because when they sap us of our capital and all of our trade, we're not gonna be left with enough capital to even rebuild the different industries that are being destroyed. Once an industry is destroyed, it's very hard to resurrect it. It's much easier to preserve an industry than to try to bring it back. So right now, I wouldn't exactly say we're bringing back industries, but for now, we're at least preserving them. Similar to what Switzerland does with their agriculture. Like, everyone knows what Nestle is, and those corporations. Those corporations in Switzerland are actually protected by the Swiss government through their tariffs from foreign competition within their country. So tariffs work, Switzerland is not a stupid country.
No,
they know what they're doing.
There's a reason nobody has touched them in like 2 back-to-back world wars.
Exactly. No one wants to mess with Switzerland economically because they're very powerful.
Definitely, and they have earned it, and they know how to be smart. They're so smart on like trade, on gun rights, on everything. It's crazy. I just have to interrupt, guys. Oh my God! Updated election results: 99% reporting. Joe, are you seeing this, Joe? Connor Lamb.
Hold on, no, I haven't.
New York Times.
Let me pull it up. I gotta pull it up now.
I'm gonna go ahead and just Nate.
I can't look.
I'm announcing it. Oh my God, 99.
I'm an addict. I have to see this.
99% of precincts reporting. 2 precincts left in Washington County. Or in Westmoreland County. I think that's all that's left is Westmoreland. 99% reporting in.
Oh.
Connor Lamb leads by 0.0%, 95 votes over Rick Saccone. 95. That's not even the margin.
No, this actually means he's going to win. So Saccone's going to win. Lamb has no chance at this point, I don't think, because it looks like right now with Westmoreland 99% reporting, this is a county where. This is a county where Saccone is leading, so he's off. In any addition of votes, it's going to go to Saccone.
But either one is
that's going to give him the edge overall in the end. Now, obviously, that doesn't matter. It's going to go to a recount.
It's going to be a recount with that close of a margin. Yeah. Oh my God.
Sounds like if one steel factory's workers went out to vote, it swayed in Lamb's favor. Just 500 steel workers, it looks like, can have a big effect.
Oh my God! Well, again, as
speaking of 500 steel workers, thanks to Trump's tariff in I believe it's Granite City, Illinois, and I'm from Illinois. We're actually having a steel plant that was going to be closed down being opened back up, and we're going to see employment of 500.
That's right. Yeah, that's
just like protectionism right there.
Yeah, that's awful protectionism, guys.
Killing jobs.
Oh my God! You're going to have to pay 12 cents more for every single steel item you buy. I don't know. What do you think? 500 jobs or that 12 cents?
That's exactly like what the solar tariffs did, dude. He had the solar tariffs, like 30%, I think it was. And, there was a bit of a standoff, and then Jinko Solar, a Chinese company, immediately backed down and said, okay, we'll build a plant in Florida, invest $410 million, and give you 800 jobs. Like, they backed down. And that was kind of like a test run. I think that was Trump putting his toes in the water, and it worked.
The customer's always right. And we're the customer. That's how capitalism works. We're the ones buying.
Right, and here's the thing. What people don't understand about international trade is you're not like in this transaction, it's not just products going to people. You're paying for our consumers. You don't have exclusive rights to our consumers. You pay for our consumer base. We have the largest consumer base in the world. We consume more than any other country. So when China goes and makes a deal with us on trade, they obviously are going to want the freest possible trade because they want that exclusive, untaxed access to our consumer base. And that's why I think outside of 2013, were China's largest. They imported to us more than any other country. We're their largest consumer group. And in 2013, it was Hong Kong. So that should tell you, and that's in China. So that should tell you something.
Oh boy, yeah. I'm still just looking at these election results. I can't believe it. Again, I think it is worth pointing out. He's ahead. The Democrats ahead by 95 votes, 109,945 to Rick Saccone, the Republican, 109,850, 95 vote difference. And who's in third with 0.6%, 1,334 votes? Libertarian Drew Miller. Oh,
what about the Green Party?
I guess they didn't get a on this one.
They're not very popular.
Point being, though, this is the problem.
What about the environment?
Green Party, because of the race being so close like this, you're going to see Drew Miller actually robbing him of a decisive victory. That could have prevented a recount.
Yeah.
That 0.6 would have been significant.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick, I think Rick Saccone's still going to win, and I say that only because the only county that doesn't have 100% of votes counted is Westmoreland, and he's leading 30 by 10,000 votes in that county.
Yeah,
and if those 10,000 votes go to him, that's going to give him the edge. That should raise him up. That should raise him up enough to get almost to 50% of the vote. And
obviously, they're all going to vote Libertarian.
Yeah,
that's what's going to happen.
The Democrats in Pennsylvania,
and they're all gonna prance around with their Gadsden flags, yelling "No step on."
No step
and
curse you, Libertarians! No, this is
no
one thing.
steel factories.
This is one thing that I kind of like, quote unquote, I use that word lightly, about the top 2/jungle primary system that we have in my state, California, and also in Louisiana, where it's just the top 2 candidates overall who then go to the general, and then it's just those 2. No Libertarians, no Green, no Peace and Freedom, no none of that crap. But obviously in California, it doesn't mean much because it's always just 2 Democrats in the final 2 now. But in Pennsylvania especially, what's going to happen. It's going to go to a recount, which is, in other words, is a Democratic box stuffing contest to see how many votes they can stuff in. And they will do it because...
Trip to the graveyard.
Exactly. You already had the Democrats grossly, blatantly abuse the power of the state Supreme Court to rewrite and redraw the congressional districts, which, that's the equivalent of the Senate, of the House, making executive orders. That is blatantly unconstitutional. That is not how it works. They're going to take it to SCOTUS, and I imagine SCOTUS will rule in favor of the Republicans, that the court has no right to draw districts, but that's not going to be resolved before the midterms. So you see they're already willing to abuse the court, not just as they have against Trump with all these rogue Hawaii, California judges, but they're abusing this court to take out red states. And now that's just one more reason why they're definitely going to resort to dirty tactics to give this seat to Conor Lamb. And again, it's all subjective because this seat only serves for another couple months as a result of the redrawn districts, which go into effect prior to the midterms in November. So either Lamb or Saccone, either one, they were going to have to run for, quote, re-election in another district, regardless of who won. So the seat itself is relatively useless. But this election itself was supposed to be a bellwether for, how are the Republican voters? How are the Democrat voters? Are they fired up? Are they able to win Trump seats? What we're getting from this, it doesn't say much. Are both bases equally enthusiastic? Are they equally unenthusiastic? I really don't know what to take away from this, man.
Well, one thing I can say is that this is proving once again how I think close the elections are going to be in swing states. However, I was expecting Democrats to come out swinging in these midterm elections because they're so upset by Trump. Obviously, it's become very two-sided in regards to liberals versus conservatives since the election of Donald Trump, and them going at it with one another is going to drive them to get out to the polls more. So you're going to see more of a Democrat turnout, I think, coming into the midterms. And also in this race, what I'm seeing is, yes, it's going to be very close. And yes, it was a formerly Republican-held seat. But if the Republicans hold on to it nevertheless, that's going to really encourage Republicans in swing states that they can go out and vote and they can win, especially in areas like this where they said that Trump wasn't resonating with his base, or that it's all going to go blue again. They're disgusted with Trump, blah blah blah. All these fake news reports coming out from the mainstream media.
Yeah, because
so that's.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, and so that's what we're going to have to be looking for with this election. It's kind of a precursor on what's to come. Because don't underestimate the Democrats. They're going to be coming out in far greater numbers in this midterm than they have in any other midterm, because they are scared.
They're scared,
Trump
definitely.
That's why
we were hoping to ride the wave off of what happened in Texas, because you had Democrats saying, "Oh, we're gonna have a real big blue wave in Texas. We're gonna turn Texas purple, or maybe even blue." But then what you had is, the Dems had like 200% increase in early voting, like mail-in ballots, but then the Republicans came out in storm on election day, and what you had is in Texas, Rush Limbaugh actually pointed this out. They broke their own primary record. The previous record was about 1.4 million primary voters in 2010. Sound familiar, right? We all know what happened in 2010. In this midterm, in the gubernatorial and Senate election, it was 1.5 million. So that seems to indicate there is still serious enthusiasm among the Republicans. But yeah, the Democrats too are also fired up, and it is going to come down to.
I think the Democrats are demoralized, honestly. If any of them are living in reality, then they can see that their power has been slipping every single year for the past 8 years across the entire country.
Yep.
That's election crush.
I would agree with you. But I would only agree with you if the Democrats weren't so smug and arrogant and self-righteous. See, they think that anybody that's unlike them is evil, so they're like, "Oh, obviously we're gonna win, so I'm gonna go." But and like
that's sure gonna attract people.
Disgusted by Trump. What?
I
didn't hear what he said.
He said
just froze.
That's sure to attract people. I think.
I just don't think that attracts any new people.
Yeah, no.
Oh no, it's not gonna. But they don't get that though.
Right, because
that's my point. They don't get it.
That's the funny
thing. They need new people to be able to win anywhere. They're losing people. If they don't change the demographics that's going on, politically speaking, they're not going to win. You can't just keep on voting with the same group of people and expect to win when people are leaving your group rapidly. They've been resigned to a coastal party.
What really gets me about this whole issue is that if we were to have protectionist pro-union Republican go against a protectionist pro-union Democrat, the Republican's going to win every time, because they align more with the values of these people. So that's what Democrats really need to be afraid of, are these populist nationalist candidates coming up that are more interested in the American people and the working class and keeping jobs here, making things here. That's gonna draw in that vote, and once we get that vote, the Democrats are losing a major bargaining chip, and that's the unions. Because once the union members start going out and voting Republican, then the union leaders are going to start thinking about donating to Republican candidates. Then you're gonna have the corporate donations coming in for Republicans, and you're going to have union donations coming in. It actually baffles me. It baffles me.
The RNC is crushing in funding right now.
In the past 60 years.
Exactly.
It's insane.
Yeah. Well, and the reason the RNC and the Trump 2020 campaign are both smashing fundraising records, it's mostly small donations from average people. And yeah, they're crushing fundraising records, and the Dems are still in debt by a couple million, I think. Like, their funding is awful, and they're basing it on this grassroots. They still think that this #resist is what's going to work. The funny thing I kind of hinted at the beginning is the last two. What are some of the big recent victories they had? They had in Alabama, and however this goes, they have Conor Lamb here in Pennsylvania. These, again, are moderate, if not outright conservative Democrats. Doug Jones was one of the only two Democratic senators who repeatedly stood and applauded for Trump during the State of the Union on multiple occasions. You have Conor Lamb, who's said he's very pro-gun. He says he will not support Nancy Pelosi as House Minority Leader. These guys are doing better because they're campaigning as moderates, as blue dog Democrats, Clinton-era Democrats, not these purple-haired, LGBTQ resistance people. And they're still so delusional that they think that's what's going to win them seats in 2018. But it's not, especially not in the Rust Belt, and even not in the red seats that Republicans hope to take back, like Missouri, Indiana, North Dakota, all that good stuff. So they are in for a surprise. It depends on the individual candidates they run, of course. But the trend, they're ignoring the trend and thinking, oh, we won as Democrats. No, they didn't win as your radical, coastal liberal Pelosi Schumer Democrats. They won as your extremely moderate blue dog Clinton-era Democrats. And they're going to completely ignore that.
But it sounds like the only way they're party is going to win there is if they're dragged to the right. And if those men obviously keep their word, they're going to start compromising with the president. If they're conservative Democrats, they're going to they're going to be tested if they're actually going to vote conservatively, which will be kind of funny to see Democrats voting conservatively. But it could happen. It happened decades ago. Yeah. It could happen again.
You had like a handful who voted like for a couple of Trump's more controversial cabinet nominees, Sessions, Mnuchin. You had a couple who voted for Gorsuch for Supreme Court. And yeah, when it comes down to the legislative issues, Schumer seems to be doing a good job keeping them in line, whether it's on the tax bill or Obamacare repeal. But it still remains to be seen. If, for example, I still think Trump should really get back to infrastructure as soon as possible. Right now he's doing trade, which the great thing about trade,
popular issue.
Oh yeah, the great thing about trade is that he can do it unilaterally. These tariffs, pulling out of NAFTA, he can do that all on his own. The only thing he needs Congress for is if they rewrite a new deal, which Congress then has to approve. But otherwise, he can pull out of NAFTA on his own, all that stuff. But bipartisanship on an issue like infrastructure. Infrastructure is one of the major issues where he bucked the Republican Party tradition and really could get Democratic support. I would be surprised if Democrats do not at least in some capacity support an infrastructure bill. And that's why I was upset that, this gun control thing kind of pushed infrastructure off the radar, because they were really, right after, at the start of 2018, they were pushing for infrastructure. Then gun control came up, and then that spurred out for about a week or so. Now that's kind of off the radar again due to tariffs and with North Korea and some other foreign policy affairs. I still think, obviously, there's a lot of time left. I would hope they address it before the midterms, because if they get a good infrastructure bill passed before the midterms, that would definitely boost his chances in the Rust Belt states even more.
But Eric, who will build the roads?
Who will build the roads? Yeah.
Libertarians won't agree with that. That libertarian vote and all those libertarian congressmen from the Libertarian Party in Congress, they're really gonna go after that.
All two of them. All two of them, right?
This is why the Republicans have to be. This is why the Republicans have to be really conscious about who they choose to run in this election. They're not going to win on these establishment corporate supporting candidates. You're going to need to be by pulling up grassroots people. You don't want a guy like Scott Walker running for union members. That's not going to do well for him. That you don't want people that support right to work. You're not going to. Yes, you're going to alienate other Republicans, but those other Republicans are still going to go out and vote Republican, even if he's a protectionist.
Exactly.
That's not going to change anything. What you are going to change is if you can sway the union vote over to you. That's a far bigger deal. You need to be running. You need to be running pro-union, pro-protectionism candidates. That's the only way that we're going to flip it, because you have to. This is my problem with the Republican Party is they're so antsy on. They're so hasty. I don't know how to put it, but they're very, very worried about embracing what Trump is. Trump is a working class populist. He's rallying the working class around him, and he's using them as a weapon against the Democrats, because a lot of their vote base is made up of these white working class people. And especially at this time right now when men are in this unemployment like death spiral. This is the perfect time for Republicans to start running this way. And yes, then you can get majorities in the House and the Senate. You might even be able to get a supermajority in one or the other. Then you can start making real changes that really matter. This is the crucial point where we decide what the future of the Republican Party is going to be, what our history looks like, and whether we're going to die on our feet or die on our knees.
Right. And that's why I'm referring to the issue that, obviously they're very reluctant to embrace what Trump stands for. I think, for the most part, a lot of the disagreements just come in on his rhetoric, how blunt and politically incorrect he is, which is one of the best things. But then on the few issues, it's mostly infrastructure, he's proposed the $1 trillion bill, and trade. Those are the two big issues that really get these hashtag, the principled in quotation marks, conservatives to really go crazy when they hear his name, even though they cannot see the obvious chance for victory in front of them. Obviously, you win a victory on protectionism and less far-right ideas, and it wins.
They want to win a victory on their terms, not on the terms of reality.
Of course not. They fail.
This is why the Republican Party's been strategically losing for the past 60 years.
Yep. Because they'd rather be purists and not. They'd rather lose with honor than win, maybe occasionally dirty. Because Trump won. And he ran.
It's not honorable, though. You know what I mean? It's exactly. It's not even honorable. It's not honorable to send a bunch of people's jobs overseas and just be like, okay, go find another job.
Right.
Good luck.
But what they fail to see even is
well, simultaneously giving illegal aliens amnesty.
Oh,
I mean, you got to be
God.
kidding me.
Well, because when Trump won, yeah, he won on those anti-Republican, quote unquote, as it were, ideas. But then him being in office allowed them to pass the tax cuts. Their holy grail. When you have someone that you agree with 60% of the time, you can still get your stuff. You get a really far-right justice on the Supreme Court, which is good. You get the taxes. You get some kind of Obamacare repeal. You get deregulation that even Reagan didn't do. But they'd rather, nitpick and have their purest candidate. They'd rather have a Ted Cruz or a Rick Santorum than a Donald Trump, and they fail to see how that is just practicality. Politics is all about compromise and practicality.
Yep.
You're not going to get 100% of what you want. That was a great quote that Reagan had. I'd rather have a 60% friend than a 100% enemy. But these purists, these free market, free trade purists will say, "Oh, and I want a 100% friend." You're not going to get that in politics.
Well, and it's funny too. Is
I think what it comes down to is sorry.
Go ahead.
I think what it comes down to in the Republican Party is if you embrace a strict platform or populism. What's great about populism is you can apply it differently in every state. The way you win elections is by representing the people's values in each state.
Exactly.
So if the people in the Rust Belt want protectionism, then give them protectionism. If people in Idaho want free market globalism, then have a free market globalist candidate. As long as Republicans win in all these states, we should let each state have their own values and ideas. I don't see why we have such a strict purism going on around the platform. I would call it platform purism.
Yeah.
Rather than just representing the people and allying together against the left wing. I think it really should just be the broadest right-wing coalition possible to fight for nationalist values. It's nationalism versus globalism. I think if you had to put it down to the simplest level, if you're for America or you're for the globalist free traders.
I would be watching out using the word globalist because apparently, according to Now This, globalist actually means Jew, and I've never heard that before in my life. But
that's genius.
Yeah, I know, right? I guess that's what that means now. I had no idea. I had just like
nationalist means
milk was a creamy white symbol for white supremacy. So I mean, but yeah, seriously, that was actually a video that they put out, and the funniest thing was they actually
that article too.
They actually implicated Alex Jones in the article for using the word globalist at the time. Yeah, it's the two biggest globalists in Alex Jones's videos, and I'm not a big fan of his or anything. Yeah, I see him on the internet all the time. Obviously, when he refers to the globalists, he's usually talking about Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, two people that aren't Jewish.
I usually think of like Merkel and Emmanuel Macron, and those two certainly aren't Jewish. So I mean, I don't know.
But that's purely intentional of what them to do. They want to associate nationalism with Nazism, which they already do. But if they can associate being against globalism with being anti-Jew, then that's just the golden grail right there. They got to associate terms with negative meanings, because if they can get rid of those terms, we have to think of new terms, and it takes people a while to adjust to those new terminology. It's just screwing with the English language. It's something they love to do to win political points.
Well, that just goes back to and this is the perfect example of the liberals shooting themselves in the foot again, because honestly, when you really look into this deeper, it's like, what are you trying to say? I was like, when you're saying that Jews are globalists? Is that what you're trying to say by that?
They always end up proving that they played themselves. Congratulations, you played yourself.
Exactly. They did the same thing. They did the same thing a couple weeks ago.
You're not supposed to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
What?
You're not allowed to ask that question.
No, I'm just like, you know what I mean? It's like, is that what you're saying now? Are you saying Jews are globalists?
Oh,
I was like, that's a pretty hefty accusation, bud. and they did the same. They did the same thing when they removed the. They had a gorilla in a cage. Statue at a park.
Harambe.
I guess it was Harambe. I'm glad that's the first thing that's the first thing you thought of, because
it's the first thing I thought of.
Harambe would want Mexico to win tonight.
Was the representation of an African American in prison.
Oh.
So they demanded the city have this poor just gorilla statue removed from the playground.
Oh my goodness.
Just like, do you know what I mean? This is how the left shoots themselves in the foot. They're just proving that that's what they think about. When they see a gorilla in a cage, they think of black people. I'm like,
they try to think of the worst thing.
in a cage, I think of Harambe. I think of
He didn't do nothing wrong.
Silverback gorilla meats, all of it, just like that kind of thing. I don't think of a black person the second I hear the word gorilla or see a gorilla or anything like that.
It's just a negative psyche.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like that. Is that the way your mind works? And so it actually proves that it's like you guys are racist. That's how you feel.
And that's the ultra leftward lurching Democratic Party that is going to lose in these upcoming elections. I mean, because going back to what you said about like how it's.
I hope Elizabeth Warren runs. That would be amazing in 2020.
I don't know if she's going to win if she keeps with the denying that test.
We beat her so easily. Because here's the thing.
She fed the trolls. That was genius. Eventually, people have been harping on that for years, and she finally responded. And now it's national news. And everyone sees how stupid she looks because she won't take a DNA test. You can't take away that fake part of me.
In her defense, one of those trolls was the president of the United States.
But that's just it. Is that you mentioned that it's going to be.
By the way, I love.
He was sent by Pepe.
It exposes people, and he's been doing that his whole presidency.
Because
I hate it, but I love it at the same time.
He transcends the Republican Party because you were mentioning that it's going to be a tough pill for the Republican Party to swallow to move on from neoconservatism to this more paleoconservative approach. Because here's what's going to happen. I think the Republicans could lose both houses of Congress this November, for all we know, and Trump will still. Hey, here's the point I'm making. Here's the thing I'm saying. For all we know, they could lose both houses, and Trump will still win re-election because Trump himself is still way more popular. And his views are way more popular. And I think that might be what it has to take. That might be what it takes for the Republicans to finally get, okay, hey, we still struggling to accept Trump, just got schlonged, for lack of a better term, and Trump just won re-election by a bigger margin, which I think he will. That's what it will be, hopefully, for them to finally understand that they need to start being more Trumpian in their political views if they want to hope to hold this majority. Again, they can easily hold this majority in the House and increase their majority in the Senate if they pick up those Rust Belt states in addition to the red states like, again, North Dakota, Indiana, Missouri, all that good stuff. But that's what kills me is when it comes to really getting that old guard out of power, they refuse to go without a fight. You know, the neocons have been in power for almost 60 years now before Trump came along on top of them. They're not going to.
They're in their mid-80s. They can't last much longer.
Oh, well, yeah, no, ideally. I mean, you still have people who worship them, unfortunately.
But I heard McConnell's speech when I was in D.C. once that he's like, I heard a senator once lived to 100, and he got this smile on his face, and my eyes just widened. I have a picture of my eyes just widening. Because I was sitting like 10 feet in front of him. I just looked up at him. It's like, oh no. I was like, if you're like 86, I'm like, that's another 15 years.
Yeah.
Like, do you really, like, why would you want to die in office? I think it's there was once the Atlantic article I read that power itself, like if you're in power for decades, it actually does things to your mind.
Yeah.
Like literally mentally degrades your mental state to the point where it's like an addiction. You know, you can't get off of it until someone forces you off it.
Yeah.
And you know it just can't stop. That's why I believe in term limits, for instance.
Absolutely.
But that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
That's why people keep saying about John McCain. You know, Leo, look at this guy. This guy just got diagnosed with cancer. He's, you know, going through some serious health problems, and he still won't step down, even though I would think anybody with something like that would just leave and recover in peace and not have the stress of this job on you. But he won't leave. He will not leave. So it's just...
You know why? Because he owes people favors.
I can't imagine that he hasn't paid off any favors after... How long has he been in office now? Like 70 years?
I'm not saying he hasn't paid off favors, but every time he runs for re-election, guess what?
No, well, yeah, okay,
he calls in more. He calls in more favors every election because trust me, people don't love John McCain anywhere.
Yeah. Arizona.
Not anymore.
They say that if John McCain were to retire and his seat were to be open, there's a roughly 60 to 65% chance that seat would flip to Republican.
It's true.
Same for Jeff Flake. Oh man, Arizona. Why Arizona? Update on the election. It still says 99% reporting in, but New York Times has updated the margin now for Lamb to 0.4, 847 votes. It says 2 precincts still left to be counted. Some more absentee. The Democrat. There's still a lot of absentee ballots to be counted, which will take place like tomorrow morning. I think.
Disappointed. I thought the Libertarian would be ahead.
Yeah.
Absentee will go Republican usually.
You think so?
Too.
Well, that's
usually.
Democrat box stuffing contest. I don't know. Either way, AP says they're not going to call this election tonight. This is still going to go well into tomorrow morning. So I was hoping we could break, the result like live right here on the podcast, but I guess that's not going to happen. I'm not sure what results to take away from this, other than both sides seem to have equal strength, be that is both equally enthusiastic, equally unenthusiastic, what have you. I don't say this bodes too well for either. I mean, if this is the status quo, if it's like this narrow for both sides, we can assume Republicans might be able to hold their majority in the House. I don't know. Maybe not in Pennsylvania, but we'll see. It seems that Trump's...
I don't see them in Pennsylvania flipping to Democrats.
I think there's going to be a lot of close elections.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of this is what we're going to be seeing. Because like I said, Democrats and Republicans are going to be emboldened. Mm-hmm. Trump has this way of hyping people up that, Obama, Bush, H.W. Bush didn't have. He actually, gets Republicans to go out. He makes them excited about everything, basically. And that's sort of the aura of Trump. That's what I love about him. That's why I tell him to keep tweeting. He's always relevant in everyone's lives. He's a constant reminder to every single Republican in America. Then this is what I'm saying. People like to shat on him for his tweets, but let's be honest. Trump is always being talked about. He's almost always the number one hashtag. Something about him is almost always the number one trending hashtag. Either that or somebody else in politics. He has their eyes glued to their phones, wondering what he's going to do next. And as a Republican voter, you're going to be seeing those tweets every single time on Election Day. And that's going to be telling people, I better go out and vote. This is important. Because people actually listen to him and hear what he's saying. It's like FDR with his fireside chats, except better.
People believe what he says, too. On average.
Well, people believe what FDR said, too. It's just that he was lying.
As long as they believe you, that's all that matters when it comes to politics.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not only that they believe him, it's the access that he has. The amount of people he has access to is far greater than the fireside chats would on the radios at the time, too. So, I mean, if you just look at the situation that Trump has the country, and he has basically his base at his command to go out and vote whenever he tells him to.
President for life.
Yeah. I love he joked about that.
The comment scared everyone half to death.
Everyone's scared to death. I'm like, it was in a joke.
They take him so seriously. Like the same thing all the way back when he said, hey, if the Russians have Hillary's emails, I hope they release them. That was obviously a joke, but everyone's like, oh, Trump calls on Russia to release Hillary's emails. Like, oh my God. They have no sense of humor. I mean, it's the same with Reagan. I mean, they didn't take Reagan serious.
But that's why Kim's coming to the table.
Yeah.
After reading his tweets, it's like, what if this guy's serious about the nukes and all? You guys should talk with him.
Look at the people that the Democrats think are funny, though. I mean, that's the saddest thing about the whole thing. I mean, if you think Trevor Noah's funny,
no.
Oh my gosh,
not even.
If you think Trevor Noah's funny, if you think Jimmy Kimmel's funny, you know what he did at the what was it, the Oscars? I think it was.
Yeah.
Apparently, at the Oscars, he went out and started complaining about how Mark Wahlberg was getting paid more than his female actress, and then he gave away all the money. Or he kept all the money or something like that. He donated all that money to a woman, all that extra money that he got, and compared to the woman's salary, to a woman's sexual assault charity. That's Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
That evil man.
What a scumbag. And let's talk about Katy Perry, too.
No.
Yeah. Driving nuns out of their...
Yeah.
Literally killing nuns.
Bankrupt homes.
She had nuns. There were nuns in bankruptcy court, and she wanted to buy their convent. And she sued them and took them to court over getting the property. And the nun in the courtroom begged her, please don't buy our convent. And then she had a heart attack and died in court.
I'm pretty sure
that's like juggling burning babies. It's just terrible in every way. Like, come on.
I was gonna go a little lighter than that.
That's a good way to phrase it.
No, dude, I was gonna go lighter than that. I was gonna say that sounds like what the plot of the remake of Blues Brothers would be. But wow, you had to go and use that allegory. My goodness.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like think about all the awful things you could do. And I'm serious. You're gonna go and attack defenseless nuns in bankruptcy court.
Obama did it.
They have no standards, and that's why we have to crush these people in 2018 and beyond. Hopefully by bigger margins than tonight. Hopefully not by 0.0 margins. Oh, I don't know. It's just insane. But we'll have to see. Apparently, breaking news now. Apparently, saying that they are actually going to count the absentee ballots tonight. Roughly 1,200 ballots from Washington County that they're going to be counted tonight, rather than tomorrow morning, over the course of several hours. So this may go on for a little while longer, but at least not for a few more hours after this. So we'll see how this goes, man. See how this goes.
We'll be here in 2 hours.
We'll be I wish. Oh my god, that could be like when we start doing actual live streams. We can have like 5-hour live streams of the Shield contributors. That'll be just amazing. But we're already
long streams.
We're already at an hour as it is, so I think we're gonna go ahead and end it there. Thanks again for joining us tonight, Joe and Josh, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Make it great.
Make America great again.
Keep America great. Keep America great.